Hi friends, good morning. Welcome to Abhyas IAS Academy. Today in this particular session, I will try to take a demo on Indian polity and constitution. So especially all those who are preparing for APPSC Group 2 and Group 1, if you see the standard of questions which are coming, especially in the prelims exam, you can easily get to know that the questions standard is very high. If you see the recent APPSC Group 1 prelims of 2023 notification, and even the questions which have come in APPSC Group 2 in the screening test, the standard of these questions, it matches with the standards of UPSC exam. So what does this convey? It conveys that unless you have conceptual clarity and analytical understanding of the subject, you cannot get most of these questions right. That's one thing. In addition to this, whether you are preparing for UPSC or APPSC Group 1 or even Group 2, the first thing which a student must do is have a look at the syllabus. Have a thorough look at the syllabus, read the syllabus, try to understand it, and then you should focus on reading a lot on the terms or the keywords which were mentioned in the syllabus. Most of the questions, especially in the mains exam, they come linked to the keywords in the syllabus. So this is the first thing. So you must read the syllabus very thoroughly, have an understanding of the syllabus, and with respect to every subject, whatever is there in the current affairs, you must also update yourself, because when you write in the mains exam, you need to do value addition. When you are writing about governor, you should link in the answer what is happening around you with respect to governor. That gives value to the answer, it fetches you additional marks. Then the usual practice with me is, before I start Indian polity and constitution, there are a set of keywords and concepts related to Indian polity and constitution. Unless you understand these keywords, it is difficult for you to understand the subject when we enter into the subject. So I spend 2 to 3 classes on explaining the basic concepts and the terms related to Indian polity and constitution. So today I will take you through the basic terms and concepts which are important in the topic of Indian polity and constitution. Not just in the UPSC prelims, even in the Group 1 and also Group 2, a good number of questions, they do come on the basic terms and concepts. It's not that this is necessary for only understanding the subject, and it is not that it is only the foundation to understand the original subject. No, there are a good number of questions which are coming. There are a good number of questions which are coming straight away on the basic terms and concepts. Not just in the prelims, even in the mains exam, even in the general essay paper, there are a good number of questions which are coming on the concepts associated with every subject. So for today now, I will take you through the basic terms and concepts. So when you start with Indian polity, there is something called two theories. Theory of separation of powers, theory of separation of powers, and the second one, the theory of checks and balances. Theory of checks and balances. So these two theories, they were given by a French political thinker by name Montesquieu. He was a political thinker from France. And these two theories, they form the basis for organizing all the modern governments in almost all the countries in the world. So the understanding of these two theories is very important. Even the Constitution of India is based on the theory of separation of powers and also the theory of checks and balances. And it is the American Constitution, which is the first written constitution in the world, which is based on these two theories, theory of separation of powers and the theory of checks and balances. Here you should also know about the nature of Indian Constitution, which we say Indian Constitution is called Federal Constitution. And what is the basis to call the Constitution of India as federal? See, broadly, at the global level, constitutions are broadly classified into two categories: unitary constitution, federal constitution. Unitary, federal. These two have a link with the theory of separation of powers. That's why I'm trying to bring it here. Broadly at the global level, there are two kinds of constitutions: unitary constitution, federal constitution. What is an unitary constitution? A unitary constitution is one where all the powers, executive powers, legislative powers, and the judicial powers are conferred on the national government. In any country, if the constitution of that country confers all the powers on the national government, then that is called unitary constitution. On the contrary, on the opposite, if executive, legislative powers are divided between the national and the regional governments, then that is called a federal constitution. So the basis to call a constitution as federal is the division of executive and legislative powers. But this division of powers, it is called a territorial division. Territorial division. Or it is also called vertical division. Vertical division. Vertical division of powers or a territorial division of powers. For example, if you take the Constitution of India, in the Constitution of India, the executive, legislative and financial powers, they are divided between the central and the state governments in 7th schedule under Article 246. In the 7th schedule, we have three lists: union list, state list, concurrent list. There are 98 items in the union list. With respect to all the subjects in the union list, Parliament is supreme, central government is supreme. Parliament can make laws for the entire territory of India or part of the territory of India. Similarly, with respect to the items in the state list, list 2 is called a state list. In the state list, now we have 59 items. With respect to all the items in the state list, the state legislature is supreme, the state government is supreme. State legislature can make laws for the entire territory of the state or for a part of the territory of the state. So this is exactly what we are trying to discuss: vertical division or territorial division. The powers are vertically divided between the national and the regional governments. If such a division is present, then that is called a federal constitution. And there is one more division of powers called functional division. Both are different. Functional division is one more category. This is also called horizontal division. Horizontal division. Then what do you mean by functional division or horizontal division? You know that in the ancient and medieval period, we had monarchies. So monarchy is a form of government where the king or the queen rules the country. So at that point of time when we had monarchies, the king is everything. He is the executive branch, he is the legislative branch, he is the judicial branch. He is the person who makes the laws, he is the person who implements the laws, and he is the person who interprets the laws. So all the functions of the three branches of the government, they are combined in one person, that is the king or the queen. And as we advanced into the modern period, many political thinkers, they have felt that if all the powers of the three different branches of the government are combined in one institution, like the king or the queen, it poses a big danger to the rights and liberties of the people. And France is a classical example for that. In France, France witnessed the French Revolution in 1789. France witnessed the French Revolution in 1789. Before 1789, France had monarchy, rule of kings. And there was a dynasty called Bourbon dynasty. Bourbon dynasty. So Bourbon dynasty is the dynasty which is ruling over France before French Revolution. And it being a monarchy, we don't see the separation of the functions of the government into three branches like executive, legislature and judicial. And if you see the French society then, the Common man did not have political freedoms. They did not have rights and liberties. And there are several privileges for the ruling class, the priestly class, and the nobility. Those who are better off, those who own land and property, those who are part of the priestly class, those who are part of the ruling uh, power structure, they enjoy a lot of privileges. They got lot of exemptions from payment of taxes. But much of the burden it was put on the common man, and the common man was also not enjoying any liberty. So that's the reason why Montesquieu, this person is from France. He had seen all these things in France before the French Revolution. So Montesquieu has written a book called The Spirit of Laws. This was almost in 1748, well before the French Revolution. Montesquieu has written a book called The Spirit of Laws. In this book, Montesquieu was suggesting that if you want to protect the rights and liberties of the people, the government should have three modern branches: executive branch, legislative branch, and the judicial branch. This is called separation of powers. That's what the theory of separation of powers says. So powers are divided among the three branches of the government: executive branch, legislative branch, and the judicial branch. These are the three branches in every modern government. Legislature does lawmaking, executive does law implementation, judiciary does law enforcement or law interpretation. So if the powers of the government are divided like this among the three branches of the government, we can prevent concentration of powers. If concentration of powers is prevented, then the rights and liberties of the people can be protected. That's the theory which he was trying to explain. And this division is called horizontal division, or it is also called a functional division. So powers can be divided by two ways. One is functional division, the other one is a territorial division. If the powers are divided vertically, if the powers are divided territorially, that results in a federal constitution, formation of federal constitution. I just told you, in the Constitution of India, in the 7th schedule, we had union list, state list, and concurrent list. So Parliament can make laws for the entire territory of India. Parliament is supreme with respect to the entire country. A state legislature in Telangana is a supreme with respect to the territory of the state of Telangana. So this is called vertical division or territorial division. In any constitution, if there is vertical or territorial division of executive and legislative powers, that is called federal constitution. On the contrary, on the opposite, if the powers are divided among the three branches of the government, that division we call it as functional division or horizontal division. So functional division of the powers of the government, horizontal division of the powers of the government, it results in the formation of three branches of the government: executive, legislature, and judiciary. Now if you come back to these two theories, what is the difference between these two theories? Theory of separation of powers and the theory of checks and balances. The first theory says, theory of separation of powers says that the powers of the government, they must be divided and distributed among the three branches of the government: executive, legislature, and judiciary. Why do you need the theory of separation of powers? To prevent concentration of powers. So that's the first theory. The second theory says, second theory is called theory of checks and balances. Then what does this theory says? The theory of checks and balances says that each branch must exercise control over the remaining two branches. What is the advantage? If that is done, there will be balance of power among the three branches of the government. For example, if you take in India, judiciary controls executive. Judiciary also controls legislature. All the laws made by the legislatures in this country can be struck down as invalid if they are against the constitution. Who can do this? Judiciary can do. So judiciary has control over legislature. Similarly, all the executive actions must also be in conformity with the Constitution of India. If they are not in conformity with the Constitution of India, again judiciary can intervene and can strike these actions as invalid. So this is an example for judiciary controlling executive and legislature. Similarly, legislature also controls executive and judiciary. The judges of the Supreme Court and High Court, they can be removed by Parliament. So legislative control over judiciary. And the executive is also controlled by legislature. Lok Sabha by passing a vote of no confidence can remove the government. So legislative control over executive and judiciary. Similarly, executive controls legislature, executive controls judiciary. How? For example, if you take the executive branch is headed by the President of India, nominal executive. So if the Prime Minister heading the Council of Ministers, if he recommends to the President can dissolve the lower house even without giving any reason, which means executive has control over legislature. Similarly, executive also has control over judiciary. All the appointments done to the Supreme Court and High Court through collegium, it needs approval from the President of India. If the President of India doesn't give his approval, the appointments will not come into implementation. So this is the theory what we are discussing, the theory of checks and balances. So every branch of the government must exercise control over the remaining branches. And why this is necessary? This is necessary to ensure that no branch of the government becomes extremely powerful at the cost of the remaining two branches. There is a balance of power among the three branches of the government that is necessary to protect democracy. So that's the essence of these two theories. The first theory, theory of separation of powers. The second theory, theory of checks and balances. The theory of separation of powers helps in preventing concentration of power in any one branch of the government, and that protects the rights and liberties of the people. The theory of checks and balances. The theory of checks and balances, it ensures balance of power among the three branches of the government. So that's about the theory of separation of powers, the theory of checks and balances, and it was proposed by Montesquieu in his book The Spirit of Laws well before the French Revolution. And it is the American Constitution of USA. Fathers of the American Constitution, they are quite impressed with these two theories. That's why they have incorporated these two theories in the American Constitution. We say American Constitution is the first written constitution in the world. And it is the American Constitution which has provided for these two theories for the first time. The American Constitution, it is based on the theory of separation of powers. It is based on the theory of checks and balances. So American Constitution is the first constitution to adopt these two theories. And similarly, if you take Indian Constitution, the Indian Constitution is also based on these two theories, the theory of separation of powers and the theory of checks and balances. The Supreme Court in a number of cases, it said that these two theories, they are part of basic features. Basic features. Theory of separation of powers and theory of checks and balances, both are basic features of the Indian Constitution. How is it important if they are basic features? If they are basic features of the Indian Constitution, they cannot be amended. They cannot be taken away from the Constitution. So Article 368 in the Indian Constitution, it provides for changing the Indian Constitution through the Indian Parliament. Even by using Article 368, Parliament cannot change the basic features. Basic features in the Indian Constitution refer to those features which are very, very important, which are very, very essential. And these features cannot be amended, cannot be changed, cannot be taken away. So even in India, the theory of separation of powers and the theory of checks and balances are very important. They are the basic features of the Indian Constitution. Then I said, Indian Constitution is federal constitution. Indian Constitution is federal constitution. What is the basis to call a constitution as federal? If executive power is divided, if legislative powers are divided between the national and the regional governments, then that constitution can be called as federal constitution. So in India, in the 7th schedule, we had 12 schedules, and the schedule is an explanation to one or more articles. In the 7th schedule, under Article 246, we have 3 lists. List 1, List 2, List 3. So List 1 we call it as a union list. List 2 we call it as a state list. List 3 we call it as a concurrent list. So in the union list, we had 98 items. In the state list, we had 59 items. In the concurrent list, we had 52 items. So with respect to all the items in the union list, Parliament is supreme. With respect to all the items in the state list, the state legislature is supreme. So the powers are divided between the center and the state. Center is supreme with respect to union list, states are supreme with respect to state list. So if such division is present, then it is called federal constitution. Then the next question which should come to our mind is, why federal? Why not unitary? Why federal constitution for India? When the constitution is made, in the constituent, so you all know that the Constitution of India is made by a body called Constituent Assembly. So Constituent Assembly, in the Constituent Assembly, there were a lot of debates on every provision which is incorporated in the Constitution of India. So even with respect to the nature of Constitution, whether India should be unitary or federal, there are a lot of debates. Some members of the Constituent Assembly, they favored a unitary constitution, and the majority members of the Constituent Assembly, they favored a federal constitution. The question is, why did the framers of the Indian Constitution, the fathers of the Indian Constitution, favored a federal constitution? The reasons are many. The first reason, India has got a vast geographical size, and also we have a lot of diversity. So India has a lot of population, India has got a lot of diversity. So in a country like India, which is of subcontinental size with a huge population and a lot of diversity, any single government sitting in Delhi will not be able to administer the country to meet the aspirations of the people throughout the length and breadth of the country. So in all the countries where the population is huge, where the geographical size is vast, they go for federal constitutions because they can have a national government for administering the entire country. They can have a regional government to administer the subjects which are of regional importance. So India, because of its size and because of its population, it went in for a federal constitution. And as I said, a federal constitution is all about dividing the sovereignty. What is sovereignty? Sovereignty is the supreme political power. So in any democracy, the supreme political power is with the people. People, by exercising their right to vote, will transfer this supreme political power to the elected bodies like the Lok Sabha, like the Legislative Assembly. So in India, the sovereignty is divided between the center and the states. The supreme political power is divided between the center and the states. So with respect to all the subjects which have national importance, central government will decide. With respect to all the subjects which are having regional importance, state governments will decide. In other words, we are trying to share the powers between the center and the regions, and this is good for the country. For example, take Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is a classical example to know what happens to India if we were to have a unitary constitution. Sri Lanka had unitary constitution. All the powers concentrated in the national government. And you have Tamilians. Tamilians, in one of the province, they are in majority. And they are not given adequate powers. Being a unitary constitution, they don't have true self-governance. And when they did not have a share in the political power, when the national government is not administering them to their satisfaction, they started fighting against the national government. That led to both of LTTE, Liberation of Tigers of Tamil Eelam. It was a very dreaded terrorist organization, and as the Tamilians felt unhappy because they did not get a share in political power, they did not have true self-governance because all the powers are concentrated in the national government. They did not get fair treatment in the national government. They started revolting against the national government. That led to both of a terrorist organization. It created a lot of problems for Sri Lanka for almost 20 years. There was a destruction of property, killing of people. Even we have lost one of the prime ministers of India, Rajiv Gandhi. So this would have been the fate of India. If India had one government sitting in Delhi without having governments at the regional level, and if that government did not rule the country to the satisfaction of the people, then it would have disintegrated India. India would have broken into several Indias. And that's the reason why when the Constitution of India is being made, many Western political thinkers, they said that India will not survive as a nation for long because India has got a lot of diversity in terms of religion, language, ethnicity. So keeping all such people together is very difficult. It will soon break up. That's the view taken by the Western political thinkers. But we proved them wrong because we have designed the constitution in such a way that we provided for a strong center, and we have divided in such a way that the powers are divided between the nation and the regions, giving a share in the political power to the governments at the national level and also the governments at the regional level. If political power is shared, we can meet the aspirations of people belonging to different regions. This speaks about the wisdom of the framers of the Indian Constitution. So why did India choose a federal constitution? India chose a federal constitution because it provides for the sharing of political power between the center and the regions, and this is good for the country. If a share is given to the regions in terms of political power, then their aspirations can be much better met, and that keeps the country united. That's one reason. Second reason is, apart from the reasons of disintegration, the second reason is it is practically very difficult. In a large country like India, a government sitting in Delhi cannot provide all goods and services for every person in this country at the grassroots level. So that's why today we not only have a national government and a state government, we also have more lakhs of local governments. It is necessary. In a large country like India, it is necessary to have not just the central and the state governments, we also need local governments. Unless you have local governments in place, efficient delivery of goods and services gets affected. And forget about if we don't have local governments and state governments in India, if we merely had a government sitting in Delhi, do you think that the government sitting in Delhi will be able to provide everything for the people in the remote parts of the country? So this is the second reason why Constitution of India became a federal constitution. The next one, we also try to know about the kinds of democracy: parliamentary democracy, presidential democracy. So at the global level, again, democracies are broadly classified into parliamentary democracy and presidential democracy. Parliamentary democracy and presidential democracy. And what is the basis for classifying democracies into parliamentary and presidential? For example, if you take United States of America, it's an example for presidential democracy. If you take India, UK, Japan, Australia, they are all examples for parliamentary democracy. So what is the basis for a democracy to be called as parliamentary democracy? If you all know that in the recent past, there is one proposal called one nation, one election. So conducting elections to the Lok Sabha and all the legislative assemblies simultaneously is the proposal of the present government in Delhi, for which there was a bill, a constitutional amendment bill, which was introduced in the parliament as well. That is called 129th Constitutional Amendment Bill. Then the question is it really possible to have simultaneous elections in India which had parliamentary democracy? If you go by the opinion of people like Shashi Tharoor, he says that it is not possible because in a parliamentary democracy, the governments don't have a fixed tenure. If they don't have a fixed tenure, going in for simultaneous elections is practically very difficult, not possible. If India were to be a presidential democracy, where in a presidential democracy the governments will have fixed tenure, no falling of governments in between. So their simultaneous elections are more possible. So that's why in the context of one nation, one election, does that really work in India? If you want to appreciate, you should understand the kind of democracy which is being practiced in India. Unless you have a proper understanding of the kind of democracy which is being practiced in India, you can never know whether that works in India or not. So to understand such things, we should have conceptual clarity with respect to the kind of democracy which is being practiced in India. As I said, there are two kinds of democracies: parliamentary democracy, presidential democracy. Then what is parliamentary democracy? So I said there are three branches of the government: executive branch, legislative branch. On the basis of the relationship between executive and legislative branches, democracies are broadly classified into parliamentary and presidential on the basis of the relationship between executive and legislative branches. This is the basis. So what is the kind of relationship which exists between the executive and legislative branches? If there is a overlap, if there is a fusion between executive and legislative branches, then that is parliamentary democracy. So there is a fusion. If there is separation between these two branches, then that is called a presidential democracy. Presidential democracy. I will explain. What do you mean by fusion? For example, take in India. In Telangana, Congress party led by Harinadh Reddy formed the government after the elections to the Legislative Assembly got over. Why is it that only Congress formed the government? Why not TRS or BRS? Because in India, after every general election to the Lok Sabha or the Legislative Assembly, the rule is whichever political party gets more than 50% of the seats in the lower house, that will form the government. So in Telangana, Congress has secured more than 50% of the seats in the Legislative Assembly. So it formed the government. So Harinadh Reddy, who is the chief minister, and all other ministers in his cabinet, they belong to Congress party. And they are all MLAs. They are members of the legislature. So now in Telangana, the government is formed from the legislature. Congress had majority in the lower house in the Legislative Assembly, and from the MLAs belonging to the Congress party in the legislature, government is formed. Which means the chief minister and ministers, they are members of the Legislative Assembly. What do you mean by executive? Chief minister and council of ministers, that is executive branch. It is taken from the legislature only. Chief minister and the ministers, they are not only part of executive branch, they are also part of legislature. All of them are MLAs and they are members of the legislature. So in a parliamentary democracy, there is a fusion between executive and legislative branches. Executive branch is formed from the legislature. Similarly, take Lok Sabha. So in the Lok Sabha, after the general elections to Lok Sabha, NDA led by BJP secured more than 50% of the seats. BJP and its allies, they got more than 50% of the seats in the Lok Sabha. So it is the NDA government which formed it is the political parties which belong to the NDA coalition which formed the government. So Modi and all his ministers, they are members of the Lok Sabha. They are members of the Lok Sabha. So Prime Minister and his council of ministers, they form part of the executive branch. And where they are coming from? Prime Minister and all the ministers, they are coming from Parliament only. So here, in all the countries where there is a parliamentary democracy, executive is part and parcel of the legislature. Executive comes from the legislature. So in any country, if there is a fusion or overlap between executive and legislative branches, then that is called a parliamentary democracy. In a parliamentary democracy, the executive is accountable to the legislature directly. For example, in India, if you want to remove Harinadh Reddy as the chief minister, it can be done by the Legislative Assembly by passing no confidence motion. And if the government comes up with a budget every year, the government has to get approval from the Legislative Assembly or the Lok Sabha. So in a parliamentary democracy, there is a greater accountability. Executive is made accountable to the legislature. This accountability is also in the form of several tools. For example, we say question hour. So when the parliament meets, when the state legislature meets, the first 1 hour it is called question hour. Parliament and state legislature, they meet at 11 o'clock. 11 to 12 is question hour. So in the question hour, members of the parliament and the members of the state legislatures, they can ask questions to the government, the prime minister and the ministers, chief minister and ministers, with respect to all issues of public importance. So that makes the government accountable. And again, not only question hour, we have 0 hour, we have debates, we had motions, we had all of these tools to control the executive branch. So in a country where there is parliamentary democracy, there is a lot of accountability of the executive branch to the legislative branch. So legislature controls executive. Executive is accountable to the legislature. Executive is drawn from the legislature. So if such things are present, then that is called parliamentary democracy. But if you take United States of America, the Constitution of United States of America, it is based on separation, not fusion. In America, executive branch means American president. He is elected for 4 years, fixed tenure. He doesn't need to be a member of American Parliament. You know that in India, Prime Minister shall be a member of Parliament. In America, it is necessary that the President shall not be a member of Parliament. President shall not come from Parliament. That is called a separation. President also had a team of advisors whom we call as ministers. The President in United States of America and all his ministers, they shall not be members of the American Parliament. They should not come from Parliament. And Parliament cannot remove them. So in America, which is a presidential democracy, executive branch is separate, legislative branch is separate. Executive is elected by people for a fixed tenure of 4 years. Similarly, the legislature also had a fixed tenure chosen by the people. So one cannot remove the other. That is called separation. So in all countries with the parliamentary democracies, there is no overlap between executive and legislative branches. So if there is no overlap between executive and legislative branches, that we call it as presidential democracy. So these are the differences between parliamentary democracy and presidential democracy. Then if you see parliamentary democracy, the advantage of parliamentary democracy is accountability. In all the countries which had parliamentary democracies, the most important feature is accountability. If you take presidential democracies, the most important feature of presidential democracy is a greater stability, political stability. If you want both, you cannot get it. There is no system which was designed till now which has both accountability and stability. And in the Constituent Assembly, when there were debates about which democracy India should take up, parliamentary or presidential, many wanted parliamentary democracy because many felt that accountability is much more important than stability. And that's the reason why we chose parliamentary democracy. Then the next one, why did India choose parliamentary democracy? Why did India choose parliamentary democracy? The first reason, we are already experienced in parliamentary democracy. When we were under the British rule, Britishers have introduced the parliamentary democracy in India. We were trained in that. That's one reason. Not the most important reason, one reason. The second reason is, in a parliamentary democracy, the executive power is not given to one individual. For example, take America. Entire power is in one person, president. In India, if that were to be the case, how do you accommodate leaders from different regions, leaders from different religions, leaders from different castes, leaders from different languages? If the Prime Minister comes from, say, Hindi-speaking North Indian belt, and if the entire power is in that person, people speaking other languages from other regions, they don't feel confident about him. So in a parliamentary democracy, the executive power is shared among a group of individuals called the Council of Ministers. So in parliamentary democracy, the executive power is not given to one individual. It is given to a group of individuals called the Council of Ministers. One of them is Prime Minister. So if the power is shared, you can share it in a better way. You can take people from all the regions in the country. You can take people from different castes. You can take people from different religions. So you can accommodate the diversity in India. So parliamentary democracy, it allows for sharing of political power. And that is necessary in a country like India with a lot of diversity. That's the second reason. The third reason why we choose parliamentary democracy is it's more accountable compared to presidential democracy. In presidential democracy, the virtue is stability. Presidential democracy is stable, but it's not as accountable as parliamentary democracy. So framers of the Indian Constitution, they felt accountability is much more important than stability. So we chose parliamentary democracy because it provides for greater accountability. So these are the reasons why India chose parliamentary democracy. And even after 75 years, The framers of the Indian Constitution, they were right in choosing parliamentary democracy. Even today we feel that India needs parliamentary democracy, not presidential democracy. There are some like Shashi Tharoor, they argue in favor of a presidential democracy for India, but that creates a lot of problems. So parliamentary democracy is much better suited compared to presidential democracy for Indian conditions. So that's it about parliamentary democracy and a presidential democracy. So these are some of the important basic terms and concepts part of Indian polity and constitution for today. So maybe in the next class, I will discuss other basic terms and concepts related to Indian polity and constitution. So I hope that you have understood the lecture. If there are any doubts, please try to share your doubts in the chat if you are in the online. If you are in the offline, you can directly speak to me. So that's it for today. Thank you and all the best.